Human, you are in violation of Cleanliness Ordinance 8885. Human, you are in violation of Cleanliness. Cleanliness Ordinance 8886. Human, you are in violation of Cleanliness Ordinance 8887. Issuing sanitation. Command accept.
Hold on there. Let me sign you in.
Could I get another advance? Mr. Nandi?
Just make sure it's properly logged.
I'll note it next to the others, sir.
Well, new business turns up at last. Celia, didn't I tell you our new statistics-based advertising model would be a hit?
That you did, sir.
How can yield improvements of 26.7% not quicken the pulse? How can 32% cost savings not moisten the loins?
You've often posed these very questions.
Clear my schedule. This newcomer has a meeting with me. Celia, will you make a note of that for my self-review? Very generous.
Noted.
But not so generous I can't drive a good bargain. Now, who sent you? Rizzo's, perhaps? Or Auntie Cleo herself? Hiram? Why, he's probably still out at Devil's Peak. Not that he's had the courtesy to notify me, at any rate. But if you're here for him, I suppose that means you aren't here for Saltuna. Now, there's no need to humor me. I'm used to this particular letdown. I had hoped that livening up our advertisements with enticing figures would draw the other corporations back to our bosom, but it seems we're back to the drawing board.
Because he's scared to go it alone. You need the board to hold your hand and tell you everything's gonna be okay. Ain't that right?
Surviving alone isn't as easy as it looks. Thanks to the so-called hazard clause, Monarch has been cut off from the board's resources and protection for 10 years now. Now, we've kept ourselves in business by trading with individual corporations, but given the off-the-books nature of those transactions, such arrangements are precarious.
You talk like Graham.
Can't imagine why you'd sneer at the notion of a free colony. Could it be because you're an agent of the establishment?
I used to be young and idealistic too, but you can't run a city on high-minded ideals.
Well, Mr. Nandi here has a rather ingenious plan to get MSI restored to the board.
On our terms, mind you.
Are you out of your mind? You can't just go crawling back to your old masters.
Well, we can't continue to subsist like this either.
And if our advertising scheme hasn't borne fruit, then perhaps it's time we took matters into our own hands.
It's true, our Celia is an alarmingly competent middle manager. At any other company, she'd be wasted in data entry. The plan she refers to is a two-pronged approach, and the first part involves seeing Stellar Bay properly defended.
And a Mantisaur problem, and a Marauder problem.
Many, many problems, but they can all be solved with a Bolt 52 cartridge. If you can get us what we need to rejoin the board, starting the Bolt 52, we'll be able to become one of the most productive and secure cities in Halcyon.
And you'll have a powerful ally on the board.
Why, one of the strongest defenses in Halcyon. An extremely powerful ordnance.
I was starting to get bored listening to you, till you said the phrase extremely powerful ordnance.
It is quite the rush. An ordinance, of course. We do things in a civilized fashion here, not like Graham's iconoclasts. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you just crawled out from under a rock. Forms and procedures are everything in Halcyon. And this one is located in the old arms building southwest of town, which used to be part of Stellar Bay before we had to move our walls in. And these days, it's overrun with marauders and raptidons. Saying what which way? That's just what it's called. It's supposed to stand for something, but I forget what. Oh, and while you're at it, there should be a terminal in the arms building with some dangerous information. Perhaps you could delete it so it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. What can I do for you? Then it's good that I keep such meticulous notes. I've asked myself the same thing many times, especially seeing as the legal mechanisms we employed were part of the board's own bylaws. Not intentionally, though that's technically true. For many years, this planet was home to as many corporations as Terra 2. But back then, it was known as Terra 1. Really? I always thought they were refreshingly straightforward names. After all, the whole point of terraforming was to make them Earth-like.
Here, though, the results were mixed.
And as the other corporations began to tally their losses, they decided to pull out. Our leadership at the time certainly wanted to, but there were others of us who saw an opportunity. The chance to improve working hours and conditions, to reform MSI from the ground up. It's humane, but it's also good business sense. Exhausted, sick, and malnourished workers are not productive workers. Even a cursory review of the data bears that out. Ownership of the entire planet once the other corporations pulled out creating the perfect environment for us to enact these new reforms. That's what I thought. But the senior executives laughed in our faces and insisted we'd be relocating to Terra 2 along with everyone else. In a manner of speaking, many of us stayed behind, in an act of quiet but firm defiance. As the most senior executive remaining, I ended up in charge of what was left of MSI. I moved forward with our planned reforms, as well as our strategy to assume ownership of the planet. Yet not long after I renamed it Monarch, the other corporations dislodged us from the board and began an official campaign to paint us as lawless savages. I don't know. Everything we did was legal and above board. We followed their rules, and yet they still found reasons to declare us outlaws.
Your first mistake was expecting the board to cut you a fair deal.
I understand the sentiment, but if we can't rely on some sort of framework, then what do we have? I do think there's something useful in a governing body like the board. Something that keeps us from anarchy, but I dearly wish it functioned differently. It's a legal provision that gives the board the authority to cordon off any planet or location that it deems dangerous.
Sounds like the board gave themselves the power to arrest an entire planet.
They would say it's for the greater good. Monarch may be dangerous, but it's hardly the wasteland the board describes it to be. Whatever the board's goals, the greater good has little part in them. Why wouldn't anyone? They own nearly all the resources and infrastructure in Halcyon.
Yeah, and once you go back to him, they'll own your dignity too.
To be on the board is to be part of the colonial community, and being cut off means slow strangulation. I'm not a man to put pride before progress. If membership on the board can ease our hardships and provide us with opportunities, then that's the path I mean to pursue. Besides, I'm hopeful that additional leverage on our part will allow us a more equitable relationship.
Don't get ahead of yourself, sir.
Yes, it'll be easier to explain once we have the Bolt 52. My hope is to maintain the reforms we've managed here, and who knows? Perhaps once we're restored, we could spread them to other corporations. He and his followers call themselves the Iconoclasts. Lawless anarchists, all of them. If anyone on Monarch deserves the reputation the board's pinned on us, it's them. I'm trying to build something here. They only want to destroy things, and they risk ruining Monarch for all of us. It isn't just that they drain our people and resources. Every radical act they commit cements Halcyon's image of us all as destructive rebels, and pushes us further from the rest of the colony.
So, what's the downside?
Shall I begin with the supply shortages or the subtle but constant threat of annihilation? He's lucky the board doesn't take him seriously enough to keep more than a few UDL gunships patrolling Monarch.
An Earth Directorate assault cruiser would change his tune. It's almost a shame we haven't seen one around Monarch in a long while.
What can I do for you? But that's terrible. What happened? But that means we won't be able to log their testimonies. If there's one thing I've been hoping to re-establish in Stellar Bay, it's proper documentation for legal matters. Always a shame when tempers get the better of good sense. Still, your intervention in the matter is much appreciated. Please consider this payment for your services.
Greetings, and welcome to Monarch Stellar Industries, producers and purveyors of the finest salt tuna in Halcyon. What can I do for you today? Not at all. Mr. Nandi treats us all right and pays us well. I just spent most